Every person on Alinder respected her. They knew she was someone who kept her promises and listened before she judged. The queen had one daughter, Princess Arya. She was young, graceful, and bright like the morning sun. Her heart was kind, and she carried the same spirit as her mother. People said she had the ability to make others feel at peace just with her smile. She loved walking through the royal gardens, touching the soft leaves of the blue roses that grew only on this world. Oh. These trials did not test strength or riches, but heart and courage. The person who passed them would prove they were worthy to rule and carry the hopes of all humans living among the stars. Many men had come from far and near, noble sons of powerful families, respected generals and proud governors from other colonies. They came in silver ships and wore fine suits of honor. They bowed before the queen and looked upon the princess with admiration. But when the time came to face the trials, they hesitated. Some turned away after hearing the first description of what awaited them. Others tried to face the tests, only to fail before the end. The trials asked for courage, honesty, and compassion, things no sword or armor could provide. Courage is not as rare as it may seem. Sometimes it grows in quiet places, where we least expect it. Princess Arya nodded, but her heart was heavy. She walked through the courtyard and looked at the grand arena where the trials were held. About the queen's tests, about the idea of proving one's worth, not through power but through courage. That night, after everyone had gone home, he stayed behind in his workshop. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engines cooling down. Ethan looked at his reflection in a small piece of metal. He smiled faintly but with purpose. He could not explain why, but he knew he had to try. The next day, he would leave his home and go to the royal city. He had nothing but a simple heart and two steady hands. Sometimes that was enough to change the world. And as the suns rose over Alinder, painting the sky with golden fire, a quiet wind moved through the city streets. It carried with it the first breath of something new, hope, born not from power, but from the courage of one simple man. Ethan Cole woke before sunrise. The soft light slipped through the small window of his room and fell across his tools. He packed a small bag with what he needed most: his toolkit, a water can, and a piece of cloth that once belonged to his mother. He had no armor, no fine clothes, and no guards. But he felt a quiet strength in his chest, the kind that whispers, "Go forward." The city of Alinder was still half asleep when he stepped onto the main road, where ships glided slowly above the market towers. Children chased each other through the narrow streets, their laughter echoing against the stone walls. Traders opened their shops, unaware that a simple engineer was walking toward the palace to take part in the most sacred trials. People stared when Ethan passed them. His clothes were plain, his boots worn from long work hours. Some whispered that he was foolish for trying. Others smiled kindly, though they thought he was dreaming too high. Still, Ethan kept walking, his steps steady and quiet. After hours of walking, he reached the gates of the royal city. Guard towers stood on both sides, shining under the morning sun. The guards wore silver armor and looked proud as they watched everyone who entered or left. When Ethan came closer, one of them raised his hand. "Where are you going?" the guard asked. Ethan looked up and said with a calm voice, "I am here to face the Queen's trials." The guard blinked, surprised. You are not listed among the noble candidates?" Ethan smiled. "I am not a noble, but I am a man, and courage lives in every man's heart if he chooses to use it." The second guard looked at him with curiosity. "What makes you think you can do what princes could not?" Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "Because they tried to win glory. I only want to prove courage." The guards looked at each other. Something in Ethan's eyes made them pause. After a short silence, the first guard stepped aside and said, "Very well. Go to the Hall of Petitioners. If the Queen's Council allows it, you may begin." Ethan bowed slightly and walked through the tall gates. The city beyond took his breath away. The towers shimmered like silver glass. Gardens grew between them, full of flowers that glowed faintly even in daylight. Canals of blue water ran through the streets, carrying small silver boats to and fro. Every sound, footsteps, laughter, songs seemed to echo softly, as if the air itself listened. At last, he reached the Hall of Petitioners. Inside, noblemen in expensive suits waited, speaking in low, proud voices. When Ethan entered, they turned their heads, puzzled by his simple clothes and rough hands. One man laughed quietly and said, "The Queen must be very generous to let workers walk into her hall." Ethan pretended not to hear. He stood calmly in the waiting line until his turn came. When the royal officer called his name, Ethan stepped forward, bowed, and said, "My name is Ethan Cole, a mechanic by trade. I seek permission to face the 3 trials." The officer, a tall man with sharp eyes, read from his list and said, "No title, no heritage, no symbol of house. Are you sure you understand what you ask for?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Courage does not need a title." The officer looked thoughtful, then nodded. "The Queen has said that all hearts may be tested. Go forth. The first trial begins at sunrise tomorrow in the Garden of Crystal Roses." Ethan thanked him and was led to a guest chamber. The room was small and quiet, meant for challengers before the test. He lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the gentle hum of the city. His thoughts filled with the image of the trials, the Queen watching, and the princess standing beside her mother. He wondered what kind of person she truly was beyond the public image. He wondered if she was kind. That night, while the city slept, Ethan stayed awake. Fear tried to whisper to him, but he refused to listen. He thought of the people he had helped in his life, the child whose broken shuttle he repaired, the farmer whose power cell he rebuilt so his crops would not die. Those small acts gave him strength. Courage was not about fighting battles or conquering worlds. It was about not giving up when it mattered. At dawn, the sound of bells spread across Elinder. The first trial would begin. Ethan rose, washed his face, and put on his cleanest shirt. He tied his repair gloves at his belt not as weapons, but as reminders of who he was. When he stepped outside, the palace court was alive with light. The Queen and Princess stood on a high balcony above the gardens. Their eyes followed him as he approached the entrance of the Crystal Rose Garden. The nobles whispered to each other, doubting him. Some laughed quietly. Others just waited to see him fail. But Ethan did not care about their voices. He looked up once more at the balcony. Princess Arya met his gaze, and for a moment it felt as if the noise around them disappeared. He bowed respectfully to her, and then turned to face the open gates of the garden, knowing that beyond them lay his first test. His heart was steady, his breath calm. He walked forward. The gates closed behind him, and the future began to change. The Garden of Crystal Roses shone under the morning light. Each petal caught the sun and scattered it into tiny points of color. The air was still and cold, and the scent of the flowers was sweet but strange, almost sharp like metal. Ethan Cole stepped carefully onto the white stone path between the glowing bushes. He had never seen a place like this before. It felt alive, almost watching him. He remembered what the royal officer had told him last night. The first trial was the trial of compassion. Many before him had failed because they had not understood what that word truly meant. They thought kindness was weakness and mercy, a delay of victory. Ethan knew better. He had seen in his work that machines lasted longer when handled with care, and people healed faster when spoken to gently. As he walked deeper into the garden, a quiet sound broke the silence. It was a low hum, deep and rough. Then a figure rose from the ground ahead. It was a tall machine, old and covered with dust, shaped like a soldier. Its body was cracked in several places, and blue lines of power ran weakly across its arms. The machine was called the Guardian of the Roses, built long ago to protect the royal grounds. The machine turned its head slowly toward Ethan. Its voice was hollow. "Who enters to disturb the Queen's garden?" Ethan did not run or draw any weapon. He bowed slightly and said, "My name is Ethan Cole. I came to face the first trial." The Guardian's eyes glowed bright. "Then you must pass through me. Many before you have tried. None have crossed. Will you fight?" Ethan looked at the machine closely. He could see that one of its legs was twisted, and its chest plates were cracked where the power core shone. He thought it must have been in pain if machines could feel such things. He stepped forward slowly and said in a calm voice, "I will not fight you. I will help you." The machine paused, did not understand. "You cannot pass without victory. Help brings no victory." "Perhaps not," Ethan said. "But I cannot walk away from something that is broken." He opened his toolkit and knelt before the machine. Sparks flickered from the damaged wires, and the hum of its heart grew weaker. Ethan reached in carefully, adjusting and tightening, cleaning the ancient dust from the power lines. He worked patiently, his fingers sure and steady. The nobles watching from the palace balcony grew restless. Some of them laughed. "What is he doing? He is repairing the test itself." Queen Leora watched in silence, her sharp eyes thoughtful. Princess Arya leaned over the railing, her heart beating faster. Something about this quiet man held her gaze. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Ethan finished his repair and stepped back. The glowing lines on the machine brightened and ran smoothly again. The hum changed from broken to clear. The garden shimmered with new life as the machine straightened its back for the first time in decades. It looked down at him. "Why did you help me when you could have destroyed me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I saw no enemy here. It's only a part of the past left alone too long." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the Guardian bent its metallic knee and lowered its head. "You have passed. You understand compassion. Go forward." Ethan nodded respectfully and walked through the white gate that opened behind the machine. The nobles were silent now. Even the ones who had mocked him had no words. Princess Arya turned to her mother. He passed without fighting. Queen Leora smiled gently. "Yes." He reminded the world that kindness is not weakness. It is the heart's first courage. Ethan went to his chamber that night, more tired than he expected. His hands were sore, his eyes heavy, but his spirit was calm. He had passed the first test, not by strength, but by heart. Yet he knew 2 more trials waited, and they would not be easy. The next morning, he was led to the palace hall known as the Hall of Mirrors. The room stretched far and wide, its walls covered with countless mirrors. Each mirror shone so bright that it was hard to see where the floor ended and the walls began. The Queen's voice echoed softly in the distance. "The second trial begins now. In this hall, you will face yourself. The truth is often harder to bear than pain or fear." Ethan took a slow breath and stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with a heavy sound, and the world turned quiet again. He saw his reflection in every direction, hundreds of Ethans staring back at him. But something was strange. One by one, the reflections began to move on their own, doing things he did not do. One showed him wearing rich robes and a crown, another showed him turning away from those in need. A third stood proud and cruel, stepping over fallen people without care. Each reflection whispered different things. You could rule if you wished. You could be powerful. You could have the world. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them again and spoke in a steady voice. I do not want to rule or conquer. I only want to stay true." As he said those words, the mirrors began to crack one by one, until only one reflection remained his true self, standing calm and honest. Princess Arya, watching through the observing glass, felt a tear on her cheek. Queen Leora's lips curved into a knowing smile. The second trial had begun, but already Ethan was proving something greater than pride or strength. He was proving that courage starts not with battle, but with truth. The light inside the Hall of Mirrors faded as the last reflection disappeared. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the great doors opened again, and Ethan Cole stepped out. His face was calm, but pale. The air outside felt fresh against his skin. He had seen things inside that hall which still lingered in his thoughts. He had faced himself and learned to be honest. Queen Leora and Princess Arya stood at the edge of the marble platform. When Ethan bowed before them, the queen spoke with soft authority. "You have passed the second trial. Honesty is the shield that protects the heart. Now the final trial awaits. It will test courage. It will test fear. You may rest before facing it at dawn." Ethan lifted his head. His voice was steady, though his body ached from the strain. "Thank you, my queen. I will be ready." He was led back to his chamber again. The city outside the window sparkled under the fading light. He could hear the hum of distant airships and the quiet songs of the people finishing their workday. Lying down, Ethan looked at the ceiling and let his thoughts wander. He wondered what the final trial would bring. He wondered if he would see the princess once more. He remembered her eyes during the second trial, how she had looked at him with something like faith. The sound of the bells woke him before dawn. The palace was still when he stepped out into the corridor. A single guard led him through long halls, down winding stairs, and finally to a vast open court beneath the palace. Above, the first rays of morning touched the high arches of the ceiling. At the far end stood the queen and her daughter. When Ethan approached, the queen said, "To face the final trial, you must walk through the chamber of storms. No blade or wall will protect you there. You must face what lives in your mind and heart. If you lose, you will not die, but you will never be the same again. Are you ready?" Ethan took a breath. He felt fear press against his chest, cold and heavy, but he did not turn away. "I am ready." The queen lifted her hand. The great stone doors behind her rumbled open, revealing darkness broken by flashes of light inside. The sound of thunder filled the chamber. Ethan walked forward without hesitation. Soon as he crossed the threshold, the doors closed behind him, sealing him in the vast storm. Wind roared through the chamber, sharp and wild, carrying voices that were not real. The light flashed and vanished again and again, showing strange shapes that looked like memories and shadows from Ethan's past. He saw his childhood home, the workshop where he had worked long hours, and then he saw the faces of those who had doubted him. The storm twisted them until they became something cruel, whispering that he was nothing, that courage was a lie. He felt his knees shake, but forced himself to stay upright. The air grew colder, the wind harder to bear. He pressed one hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "I am still here," he said quietly. "I will not break." Then the storm changed. It gathered before him, forming a figure that looked exactly like him, but darker, harder, filled with anger. The other Ethan spoke first. "You are weak. You will fail because the world is not kind." Ethan stared at the figure and said slowly, "You may be my fear, but you do not decide who I am." The figure struck, but Ethan did not run. He walked straight through the shadow. It vanished in smoke that broke apart into light. When the light faded, the storm was gone. The chamber was calm again. Outside, the queen and princess had watched through the vision crystal. When the storm cleared, they saw Ethan standing tall in the center of the empty court. Princess Arya let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. "He did it," she whispered. Queen Leora smiled. "He has faced fear and found courage." This trial was not about victory. It was about truth. The queen's guards bowed as he walked across the polished floor. When he reached the throne, he dropped to one knee. "My queen," he said softly, "the trials are done. I hope I have honored your kingdom." Queen Leora raised her hand, signaling him to stand. "You have honored us all. You came as a worker, a man of no title. Yet you reminded this world of what humanity means. You have done more than pass. You've changed us. Princess Arya came down the steps and stood beside her mother. She looked at Ethan with bright eyes. No prince stood, but you did. Showed courage when all others fled. Ethan bowed again, not out of pride, but deep respect. I only did what my heart told me to do. The queen turned to her daughter. Arya, what does your heart say? Arya looked at Ethan and then at her mother. Her voice was steady and clear. My heart sees the man who faced every truth without fear. Then so it shall be. The court fell silent, and the morning light poured through the high windows, wrapping the three figures in soft gold. Ethan stood there, not as a worker or an outsider anymore, but as someone who had proven that courage can rise from anywhere. And in that moment, the kingdom itself seemed to breathe again, renewed by the power of a single brave heart. The sun rose slowly above the silver towers of NetNarrator. The sky was deep gold and calm, the kind of morning that made the whole world feel new. Bells rang from the highest spires, and people gathered in the wide courtyards below the palace. Everyone spoke of the same thing. The trials were over. The man with no title, no wealth, and no army had passed where princes had failed. His name was on every tongue, Ethan Cole. Inside the palace, Queen Leora looked out from her balcony. Her eyes were thoughtful, her hands resting on the railing. For many years, she had watched brave men compete and fail. They had come with fine words and empty hearts. Now, because of one ordinary man's courage, her kingdom had changed forever. She turned and called softly to her daughter. Arya, the people are waiting. Princess Arya stepped forward, wearing a gown of silver fabric that glowed in the morning light. Her hair fell over her shoulders, and her face was calm but bright. Do you think they will accept what we are about to do, Mother? Queen Leora smiled gently. They will, because they believe in him, and in you. Together, you will remind them that courage is the truest crown. Down in the courtyard, Ethan stood quietly among the guards. He wore a simple suit, woven with pale threads, a gift from the queen. Even then, he looked more like himself than anyone expecting a title. He did not think of this as victory. He thought of the people in the lower city, the workers like him, who dreamed of something better. He thought of his mother, who had once told him that kindness could move mountains. When the palace gates opened, a soft wind swept through the air, carrying rose petals. The people lifted their eyes as the queen and princess stepped onto the grand steps, shining in the light. The royal herald raised his voice. People of Elendor, your queen speaks. Queen Leora's voice carried strength, but her tone was full of warmth. For many years, we asked the wrong question. We waited for royal blood to show us courage. Yet today, a man without title reminded us what it truly means to be human. He faced fear, truth, and compassion without once seeking reward. He walked into the storms of the heart and stood tall. She turned toward Ethan. Ethan Cole, you have brought honor to our people and hope to our future. You may not have been born to rule, but you were born to lead by example. You have earned the respect of this kingdom and the heart of my daughter. The courtyard erupted in sound cheers, applause, and tears of pride. Ethan stood still, his throat tight. He had never imagined such a moment. When Queen Leora gestured for him to step forward, he walked up the marble steps and bowed low before her. My queen, he said quietly, I thank you, but I am only one man. Any of us could have done the same. The queen looked at him for a long time, perhaps. But you are the one who did. And that is the difference. Then she took his hand and placed it in Arya's. The princess looked at him, her eyes filled with both joy and peace. You faced every trial not for power, but for truth. You saw me not as a prize, but as a person. For that, my heart chooses you. Ethan met her gaze, his voice soft but firm. Your heart is worth more than every crown ever made. I will protect it, not with pride, but with care. The queen lifted her hands, and the crowd grew silent again. Then, by the voice of the crown and the will of this kingdom, let it be known, no prince claimed the princess, but a man of courage did. The hills of Elendor echoed with celebration. Musicians began to play, and the bells rang across the city. The people filled the streets, dancing and singing. It was not just a royal wedding they celebrated, but the beginning of a new age, one where worth was not given by the throne, but by the heart. As the day passed, the ceremony turned into a feast that lasted until night. Candles floated in the air, glowing like tiny stars. The queen watched happily as her daughter and Ethan stood side by side, greeting the people not as rulers above them, but as friends among them. Later, when the moon rose high, Ethan and Arya slipped away from the noise and found a quiet place on a high balcony. Below them, the city lights shimmered like a sea of gold. Ethan looked out across the horizon. When I was younger, I used to stare at those lights and dream of what was beyond them. I never thought I would stand here. Arya smiled and touched his hand. Dreams have a way of finding those who do not give up. He looked at her, his heart full, but calm. If courage can build a world like this, then we must keep it living for others. And we will, she said softly. Far below, a gentle breeze moved through the gardens of crystal roses. The repaired guardian stood silent now, watching over the palace grounds, its metal frame gleaming in the moonlight. All around, NetNarrator glowed with new hope. From that day forward, the story of Ethan Cole was told to every child. They learned that courage was not only for soldiers or kings. It was for anyone with a heart willing to stand, to help, and to believe. The queen's reign continued in peace, guided by wisdom and the quiet strength of the man once called ordinary. And whenever people looked to the stars, they remembered the truth that had changed their world. No prince had chosen the princess, but a human came forward with courage.